In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 243 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
We've got a couple of really good episodes on tap this weekend. We've got some new merch.
We do.
On the website.
Some cool stuff.
Yeah, really cool stuff. I'm excited about stainless steel straws, which my girls suggested, and these challenge coins that are really cool. You've got the TCAT logo on one side and you have the Unsolved logo on the other.
Yeah.
And it comes with a little stand.
I like it.
Super cool. Check that out. Let's give our Patreon shout outs. We had Kayleen Hansen.
Hey, Kayleen.
Katrina George.
What's going on, Katrina?
Amanda Fenton.
Hey, Amanda.
Kristen Prescott.
Well, thank you, Kristen.
Caitlin.
What's going on, Caitlin?
Lisa Orton.
Hey, Orton.
Michelle Miller.
What's going on, Miller?
Connie Fish.
Hey, Fish.
Tracy Ann.
What's going on, Tracy?
Glenn Tucker.
Hey, thank you, Tucker.
Jennifer jumped out at our highest level.
What's going on, Jennifer?
Bree Grubbs.
Hey, Bree.
Candace Wolf jumped out at our highest level.
Thank you, Candace.
Pamela Ashton.
What's going on, Pamela?
Courtney Hitt.
Hey, Hit.
Aaron Pittman.
What's up, Aaron?
Heather Horn.
Hey, HH.
Aaron Gano.
Well, good note to you, too.
Allie Pease.
Peace?
Peace.
What's up? Peace?
Bree Hildebrand.
Hey, Bree.
Tori Adams.
Hey, Tori.
Kim Ertle jumped out at our highest level.
Ertle like turtle.
And last but not least, our good friend Ida Mae Savage.
Yeah, hey, Ida.
And then we go back into the vault, Gibbs. This week we selected Hannah Cooper.
Appreciate that, Hannah.
Yeah, we appreciate the new support, the continued support. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Beard Bear Club.
Yeah, thank you, Beard Bear Club.
Cheryl Bullock.
Hey, Cheryl.
Who I met at CrimeCon.
You did.
Christina Wynn.
Hey, Christina.
Liberty Simlinger.
I like that name, Liberty.
And Judy Larson.
Well, thank you, Judy.
So thanks to everyone who supports the show. Gibbs, speaking of Patreon, we had a merch winner for June. That was our good friend, Mary Beth Long.
Yeah.
So congrats to her.
And our Patreon-only episode is going to come out next week.
Yep. Next Saturday night, a brand new Patreon-only episode. It'll be number, I think, 37.
Yeah, there's
done
a lot of them
37 episodes. And a lot of those on video, because we started doing that at a certain point, video and audio.
So if you want to see some funny stuff, jump on Patreon. Look at me and Mike on video.
And check it out. Gibbs, right now we have an episode out on True Crime All the Time Unsolved. We're talking about the 1973 murder of Bronwyn Richardson. And we're headed back down to Australia, New South Wales to be exact.
It's an interesting case. We have a young victim that gets abducted, murdered, and we're going to follow the trail and talk about some suspects and some interesting tie-ins.
Yeah, so definitely check that out. All right, Gibby, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
Man, I'm excited.
So we're talking about a pretty famous case, but a lot of people may not be that familiar with the name Winston Moseley. Now, they will be familiar with one of Moseley's victims. On March 13th, 1964, Winston Moseley attacked Kitty Genovese, a young woman heading back to her apartment in the early morning hours. He stabbed her and left her there to die. But he wasn't done. Winston then returned to rape her and deliver the fatal wounds that ultimately killed Kitty. Kitty Genovese is one of New York City's most famous murder victims. Her case has been cited by psychologists for decades as an example of what is known as the bystander effect. The New York Times reported that 38 eyewitnesses watched Winston murder Kitty and did nothing to help. Now, this turned out not to be true. There were a few witnesses, but the staggering number reported by the New York Times is false. So in this episode, we'll discuss who Winston was, why he attacked Kitty, his other crimes, because this was a bad guy all around, and the truth about who witnessed her murder. Now, we don't know a ton about Winston Moseley's life. He was born March 2nd, 1935. His mother was Fannie Moseley. Alphonse Moseley was not Winston's biological father, but Winston didn't find out about this until he was almost a teenager. Now, what I will say is that it was evident from the reporting that this news, this finding out that the man who Winston thought was his father wasn't really his father, was devastating to him.
Oh, I think that'd be devastating for most people.
Yeah, unless you didn't really like your father at all, and then maybe not as devastating.
Well, that's true.
But I think, in general, you're absolutely correct. I think for some people to find out late in life that they were adopted can be very tough.
Well, I think that can be traumatizing for some.
Yeah, on some individuals. Growing up, Winston was described as soft-spoken and intelligent. According to the New York Times, he had a troubled childhood, but they really didn't go into any specific behaviors or crimes. As an adult, Winston was married and had 3 children. In 1961, he married Elizabeth Grant, his second wife. Elizabeth worked the night shift as a nurse. Winston's mother took care of the children while she worked. And it really was this arrangement that allowed Winston to prowl around at night. So, you think about that, Gibbs. His wife is working second shift. Obviously, if he has the time to prowl around at night, he has the time to watch his own kids. But that's not what happened. He got his mother to watch the kids, which in turn allowed him his free time to do bad things.
Yeah. Instead of being home spending time with his kids.
Yeah, exactly. So Winston had a bit of a secret life. He worked as a business machine operator in New York City during the day. This was a guy who had no criminal record, but he committed a number of crimes. He just never got caught. So to his wife and children, he was this normal, loving father, but there was a side to him, and the New York Times called him a psychopathic serial killer and necrophiliac.
Wow. That's a whole lot different than what his family thought he was.
Yeah, and you and I talk about that quite a bit, right? You've got killers who essentially are leading double lives, many of them married with children. And so I don't know how they do it, but they compartmentalize, right? They've got the side of themselves that deals with the family and the neighbors and all that, right? I cut my grass. I go to my kids' baseball games, little league. I'm the all around dad.
Yeah.
But there's this different side where I'm out prowling the city at night and I'm targeting victims and all of that. How do they keep it separate?
Man, I don't know how they do that.
I mean, it's a real Superman type Clark Kent
Sure.
deal.
We've done other episodes where we had similar situations.
Yeah, we absolutely have. And then we've had episodes where killers were loners.
Yes.
And they couldn't or didn't want to, either one, have the relationship and the children and all that stuff. They were, I think, what most people think of maybe when they think of serial killer. They think of the loner. They think of the guy down in his basement writing names on a list.
Yeah.
But we know killers come in all forms.
It's just hard to understand how someone can be so warm and compassionate to certain individuals.
And then completely devoid of emotion when
Yeah.
it comes to others. Yeah, it really is. Catherine Susan Genovese was born in Brooklyn on July 7th, 1935. Her family always called her Kitty. She was the oldest of 5 children. Her parents were Vincent and Rachel Genovese. Kitty grew up in a working class neighborhood. Her father ran a supply company, and her mother stayed at home with the children.
It's a name you don't hear a lot of, Kitty.
No, there's Hello Kitty.
There is. I know one Kitty, but that's it.
Okay.
But it's not a name you hear a lot of.
No, it's not. And it actually wasn't her name either. It's just what they called her.
Yeah.
I think the Catherines, the Cathys, you can somehow get to the nickname Kitty from that.
Yeah.
But a person whose birth certificate given name is Kitty, I don't know anybody. I'm sure there are people out there listening right now named Kitty, but no one that I know. Kitty was known for being energetic, and people said that she just had a zest for life. She was talkative, and she loved hanging out with her friends at school. Kitty graduated from Prospects High School in 1953. She was a good student, and she won the class cut-up superlative her senior year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, seems like something you would win. Class clown. They called it class clown, I think, by the time you and I were in school. But
yeah. Hey, any award is a good award.
Is it? Most likely to fail? That is not a good award.
You made the list.
Not for something good.
You got in the yearbook.
Most likely to be a serial killer? Nobody wants that one.
That's true. Well, there's a few people that wanted it, but probably didn't want people to know they wanted it.
Right. You want to keep that a secret.
Yeah.
After Kitty graduated from high school, her mother witnessed a murder on the streets of Brooklyn. So the family moved to Connecticut, to what they felt was a safer area to live in. But Kitty stayed behind in New York City, much to her parents' disappointment. She initially worked as a secretary at an insurance company, but she got a second job, working nights as a bartender at a bar called the 11th Hour. So no doubt, Gibbs, she was a very hard-working person, right? Secretary by day, bartender by night. And this hard work definitely paid off because she was promoted to a management position at the bar. So she quit her secretary job and she moved to Queens to be closer to work. On March 13th, 1963, Kitty met her girlfriend, Marianne Zolanko, at a place called Swing Rendezvous. This was an underground lesbian bar in Greenwich. They quickly fell in love and moved in together at an apartment in Kew Gardens, Queens. But this was early 60s, Gibbs.
Oh, yeah. You got to be really careful.
Yeah, Kitty and Ann had to tell others that they were just roommates. Because at that time, the LGBTQ plus community was not widely accepted. And in fact, they didn't even call it the LGBTQ plus community back then. But Kitty and Ann were very happy together. And they lived in a neighborhood known for being a safe place for women. By 1964, Kitty was 28 years old, and she was a very successful young woman. She often worked double shifts at the bar in order to make more money. She earned about $750 a month, which in 1964 was quite a bit of money. What do you think that equates to today?
Yeah, $4,500, $5,000 a month.
Yeah, I think you're probably in the right ballpark, but it's a good living, right? Today, 60 grand. Kitty was saving up to open her own Italian restaurant one day. So, I think when you talk about Kitty Genovese, you're talking about a person who was very independent. And according to her father, she often said, no man could support me because I make more than a man.
Yeah.
So you got to like that zeal, right? You got to like that kind of I don't need X because I'm going to make it on my own.
Exactly.
I respect people like that.
Well, sure.
In the early morning hours of March 13th, 1964, Kitty Genovese was coming home from work. It was her first anniversary with Ann. She was excited to get home so that they could celebrate together. Kitty parked her car at a nearby rail station and walked to her apartment. The distance from the parking lot to the entrance of her apartment building was about 100 feet, and the entrance was at the rear of the building. As she was walking, Kitty spotted a man at the far end of the parking lot, and I think she got nervous, and she started probably speeding up, heading to her apartment. This was early in the morning. The street was completely empty. All the stores were closed, and frankly, most of the neighbors were sleeping. As Kitty walked down the street, at some point she heard footsteps behind her. Then at 3:20 a.m., Winston Moseley approached her with a knife, and Kitty ran. She ran towards her apartment building, but Winston grabbed her and stabbed her. And reportedly, Kitty screamed very loudly, "Oh God, I've been stabbed."
So that whole scenario that you just covered, I think is a nightmare for everybody. That's the thing that you visualize when you're out walking late in the evening
Or early in the morning.
Right? Yeah. That's a fear that everybody has, is that there's nobody around, but could somebody be up here or around here, or what's that? You know, you get that hair on the back of your neck standing up, you get a little scared, and you hear a footstep, or you think you hear a footstep, and now you're really getting nervous.
Well, in this case, she actually saw someone.
Yeah.
So there's no one around to help, right? If this person, this man that she sees, decides to do something bad, and I think that's why you have the picking up of the pace. Yeah. I got to get to my apartment, you know. But you're right. It's a scary situation.
And it's such a scary situation that they use it a lot in movies.
Oh, sure. Nobody around.
Yep.
A female is walking down the street. In the movie, you see a shadow or you hear the footsteps behind.
Yeah.
And that causes fear.
Sure it does.
Causes fear in the audience because they know something bad is about to happen. The New York Times reported that a neighbor named Robert Moser opened his window and yelled, "Let that girl alone." And this seemed to scare the man off. He ran away, and then Robert closed his window. According to his testimony later, he said he heard a girl saying, "Help me, help me." He said it wasn't a scream, it was more of a cry. I got up and looked out, and across the street, a girl was kneeling down, and the fellow was bending over her. I hollered at him, "Hey, get out of there. What are you doing?" He jumped up and ran like a scared rabbit. She got up and walked out of sight around a corner.
Well, this guy probably thought he was a hero, yelling out his window, scaring the guy off, and she was able to get up and get to safety.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he thought he was a hero, but at least he thought he probably did what he needed to do to stop the situation. The problem was that Kitty was severely injured from her stab wounds. She crawled to the apartment entrance at the rear of the building, but it would have been very difficult for anyone to see her at that point. 100 yards away, Winston Moseley sat in his car, and Gibbs, he thought the police were going to come, right? He'd been seen attacking a woman. He thought, okay, it's just a matter of time until police show up, and I need to be ready to make a quick getaway. But they never did. So he waited because he ultimately wanted to finish what he started. And it was about 10 minutes later that Winston returned and found Kitty. He later told the police, "I had a feeling that the man would close his window and go back to sleep." And sure enough, he did. I realized that my car was parked where people could see it and they could see me, so I moved it some distance away. I came back because I had not finished what I set out to do. All right, that's scary. This guy goes from thinking my plans have been foiled, the police are on their way, to I'm going to go back and finish what I started because nobody seems to be coming at all.
Yeah. Well, he's thinking I still have a chance.
Yeah, and unfortunately he did. When Winston found Kitty, she was twisting and turning and calling out for help. He stabbed her again, raped her, and stole $49 from her wallet. But Kitty was somehow still alive. She was lying at the bottom of the stairs, just inside the apartment building entrance. A few minutes later, Kitty's neighbor and friend, Sophia Farrar, found her and screamed for someone to call the police. At 3:50 a.m., a neighbor, Carl Ross, called the police. So let's put it into perspective, right? We said it was around 3:20 a.m. when Winston approached Kitty with the knife. 30 minutes has elapsed. She's been stabbed a number of times. She's been raped. And now the police are being called. Now, it didn't take long for police and EMS to show up. They arrived in just a few minutes, but they were too late. In total, the attack lasted just about 30 minutes. Kitty received 13 stab wounds.
Brutal.
Yeah, brutal. And the medical examiner determined that she might have lived if the ambulance had arrived sooner.
She lost too much blood.
Well, and I think it didn't take long for the ambulance to get there, but if you think about it, we're really talking about two separate but connected incidents.
Right.
There's the first attack, and obviously if somebody would have called and the ambulance would have shown up after that, they most likely would have saved her life.
Yes.
So police began to investigate, and at 7 a.m., Detective Mitchell Sang came to question Ann. And at the time, she and a neighbor were drinking together inside her apartment. For some reason, this detective arrested the neighbor, Carl Ross, for disorderly conduct. I couldn't find really any details around it.
But that went over really well.
Yeah, we haven't found the killer, but you're out of control.
Yeah.
And I'm taking you in for disorderly conduct.
But thanks for calling the police and getting us out here.
Yeah, this was the man who called police. Now, was he belligerent? Was he drunk? Was he upset that things happened the way they did and he was taking it out on the police? Maybe. Support for True Crime All the Time is brought to you by Lord Jones, makers of the world's finest CBD products. You know, when they first began, Lord Jones was something of an underground secret, kind of a whisper among Hollywood celebs. Their CBD stiletto cream was a red carpet staple for in-the-know starlets who lived in heels. Well, I can tell you right now, my whole family is in love with not just the stiletto cream, but everything we've tried from Lord Jones. Certain LA hotels carry Lord Jones Gourmet Hemp Drive CBD gumdrops in their minibar. Lord Jones is not your average CBD company. You know, the one thing that I noticed was when we opened our package, we were blown away by how extravagant the packaging is, the containers that the products came in. Everything screams quality. So visit lordjones.com/TCAT to get 25% off your first order. That's lordjones.com/TCAT for 25% off your first order. lordjones.com/TCAT. Hey Gibbs, did you know that Credit Karma has always been there to help people make better financial decisions? And now they want to help even more. With a Credit Karma Money Spend account, you can be rewarded for good money habits. Credit Karma Money is a brand new checking account where you can win cash reimbursements for making purchases. When you use your Credit Karma Money debit card, you can win daily instant Karma purchase reimbursements on items up to $5,000. All you have to do is pay with your debit card, and if you win, you'll be notified on the spot, and your instant Karma cash will be added back to your spend account. You can open your FDIC insured spend account for free. There's no minimum balance requirements, no overdraft fees, and free withdrawals from a network of over 50,000 ATMs. Credit Karma Money. Progress starts here. Right now, visit creditkarma.com/winmoney to open your free account and start winning instant karma. Go to creditkarma.com/winmoney to sign up for free and start winning instant karma. That's creditkarma.com/winmoney win money. Instant Karma is sponsored by Credit Karma. No purchase necessary. Exclusions and terms apply. See rules. Banking services provided by MVB Bank Incorporated. Member FDIC. Maximum balance and transfer limits apply. 2 detectives interrogated Anne about her relationship with Kitty for 6 hours. Okay, that's a long interrogation, but it's really the content of the interrogation. They were asking her a lot of inappropriate questions. They asked her about her sex life with Kitty. It sounded as though most of the questions were not about Kitty. They were not about her murder or who would have wanted to hurt her. They were more about her gay lifestyle.
Yeah. These detectives just wanted to know more about that instead of focusing on what was important. Who did this and where are they at?
Yeah, I get it. Detectives need to ascertain certain information, right? That's going to help lead them to potential suspects. But is it necessary to spend 6 hours talking about the relationship between these 2 women and, more importantly, what their sex life was like? No. Because really, I think instead of using that time to try to catch the killer, who had already been identified as a male.
Right. So you're not trying to interview Anne to say she didn't have anything to do with the murder, wasn't her.
Right. You're not trying to figure out if she murdered Kitty. Yeah, we know she didn't murder Kitty. They wasted time asking Anne harassing and inappropriate questions about her relationship with Kitty. A Connecticut policeman went to the Genovese's door early that morning to tell the family what happened. Kitty's father was too devastated to identify her body, so he sent his brother. All of the children had to go live with relatives and friends for a few weeks because their parents, Gibbs, they were just unable to care for them. And I get that, right? Yeah. You're talking about a parent's grief.
Just think about how hard that had to be. I mean, here's your daughter stabbed over a dozen times. You find out she was sexually assaulted, and it just breaks your heart.
Yeah, tough enough to find that out, but then to try to take care of the rest of your children when you're heartbroken. Okay, do people do it? I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
But if you have friends and relatives that are willing to help out, I can see where maybe that's the best route for a short period of time.
You definitely can't be in the right state of mind at that moment.
No way. Initially, Kitty's murder was just a brief mention in the New York Times, just 4 paragraphs written on March 14th, 1964. The police didn't have any leads on who her killer was, but they continued searching. They knocked on doors, they interviewed neighbors, and they learned that people witnessed the crime. On March 19th, the New York Police Department received a call about a robbery. A man named Mr. Clare saw Winston Moseley breaking into his neighbor's house and stealing a television. This guy jumped on top of Moseley and pinned him down until the police got there. And you talk about taking the law into your own hands. This guy really got involved.
He did, man. Good for him.
This is the kind of neighbor that you want. Looking out for your stuff, ready to tackle an intruder just to make sure that they don't steal your TV.
He pounced.
He did. When police got to the scene, they found a TV in the trunk of Winston's car. He was arrested and taken to the police station. And I think pretty quickly, he confessed to frequently stealing appliances, right? We mentioned it earlier. This guy was a crook. He was a thief. He didn't have a record. He just never got caught. Well, now he's caught. The one thing that detectives noticed was that Winston drove a white Corvair. Remember the Corvair, Gibbs? Chevy Corvair.
What a sweet ride.
Sweet ride. Isn't that the car that Ralph Nader said in the 60s was unsafe at any speed?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was.
Yeah.
The Corvair would just blow up on you.
So,
along with the Pinto, and there's some other cars back in the day.
Just throw that into our Fiestas and our Yugos.
Yeah. But, I don't know that the Corvair was an ugly car. It's just Ralph Nader really got on it, saying this thing's a death trap. But the thing is, some witnesses at the murder scene described seeing a white car. So a detective asked Winston where he was that night. He also said that people saw his car near Kitty's apartment. Winston wouldn't answer. So other detectives working the case were called in. They noticed some scabs on Winston's hands, and I guess based on that in the car, they accused him of killing Kitty.
Well, that's all it took.
It is. I mean, I felt like they were kind of taking a shot in the dark there. But then I think they were really surprised when Winston immediately confessed to the murder. And it wasn't just kind of one of those, hey, I'll tell you anything you want to hear. He actually told them information that only the killer would have known. And you got to think about this, Gibbs. You know, think about the hundreds of unsolved cases that you and I have done where, you know, a lot of times, yeah, they struggle to find a suspect, but a lot of times they have persons of interest, they have a suspect, and they just can't get that person to talk.
Yeah.
They
try.
They try. They think they know, you know, that this person did it, but they don't have the evidence. And it's not like the person's just going to come out and tell them that, yeah, I'm the killer. Winston Moseley just came out and said that he was the killer. So around 1 a.m. on March 13th, Moseley said he left his sleeping wife and children to go prowl around for women. He said he'd been driving around all night looking for a woman to kill. He was armed with a serrated hunting knife. Now, he told them he had no motive other than a personal desire to kill. Okay, that is scary when you think about how many people at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning are just driving around in their cars looking for someone to kill.
Yeah.
Not to rob, not for any other reason other than they have a burning desire to kill someone. And he told police he'd almost given up for the night until he spotted Kitty. He saw her at a traffic light and decided to follow her home. When she parked, he parked near her and followed her. And he detailed out how he stabbed her and raped her.
But he's in a pretty chatty mood at this point.
He is, because he doesn't stop with that confession. Winston also confessed to raping and murdering 2 other women, Annie Mae Johnson and Barbara Kralik. He said he killed 24-year-old Annie on February 29th, 1964, and 15-year-old Barbara in July of 1963. Annie was shot and burned to death in her apartment. He followed Annie while she was driving around. He told police that he intended to kill her in front of her house. He said, I shot her in the stomach. Then I reloaded and I shot her again in the stomach. And I guess Annie gave him her car keys and begged him to take her inside. He dragged her into the house, stole some money, shot her again, and then after attempting to rape her, he set her body on fire.
What an animal, man.
Yeah. I mean, this guy is an absolute monster. Barbara was stabbed inside her parents' home while they slept upstairs. So she was sleeping in her room when Winston Moseley attacked her. The Berkshire Eagle quoted Moseley as saying, I looked at her for maybe a few seconds. Then I put my knife into her. As I was stabbing her, she squirmed free from my grip. I put my hand over her mouth and I stabbed her some more. He said he thought about raping her, but then he heard a voice from another room and he ran away. So again, extremely vicious.
Yeah.
This was a 15-year-old girl, but how brazen, Gibbs, when you talk about, you know, all of these attacks. This was a man who didn't seem to be all that worried about people seeing what he did, right? There were people that witnessed him attack Kitty.
Right.
He shot Anne multiple times outside before dragging her into her apartment. And then he slipped into someone's home and killed a 15-year-old girl while her parents were sleeping upstairs. This is real brazen type stuff. I mean, it's nasty, it's vicious and all of that, but it's also kind of brazen the way that he was operating.
It sure was.
And again, I can't help but go back to the all for what? In his own words, a personal desire to kill someone.
Yeah, it's the whole reason he got up and left his family in the middle of the night. He had to get that fix.
Yeah, so you're definitely talking about some type of compulsion. But I also want to go back to Winston Moseley having this conversation with the police. Because Gibbs, they were taking just a complete shot in the dark.
Well, sure.
Hey, witnesses saw a white car. You drive a white car. You got some scabs or scratches on you. We think you killed Kitty Genovese.
Yeah.
They don't have any evidence.
No.
And yet this guy confesses not only to Kitty's murder, but to 2 other murders.
And he does it in such a nonchalant way. Like this is what I did.
Yeah.
Like
ordering a pizza or, ordering at a restaurant.
Let me tell you what happened next. Here, let me tell you what happened next. This is what I did.
The other thing that police said that I think really shocked them, besides how nonchalant he was in describing the murders, they said that it seemed as though he considered murder and burglary on the same level. So you really have to wonder about a person like that who doesn't see ending a person's life or taking another person's life any different from stealing their stereo equipment.
I mean, it's a problem that he can't see that one is worse than the other.
Yeah, it's very strange. He admitted to police that he stole to supplement his income. So in total, Gibbs, when he was all done confessing, he said he killed 3 women, raped 8 women, and committed at least 30 burglaries. All from a place of what? A hunch that detectives had that maybe they would try to see what he said about it? They had no evidence whatsoever. On March 25th, 1964, Winston was committed to a psychiatric hospital for observation. Then on March 27th, the New York Times published an article titled 38 Who Saw Murder Didn't Call the Police. This was the big article that is often talked about when it comes to the murder of Kitty Genovese. In the article, they alleged that neighbors heard and witnessed the murder and did nothing to help Kitty. And apparently the source for the article came from a conversation between the Times editor A.M. Rosenthal and Police Commissioner Michael Murphy. Murphy is the one who made these claims. The Times wrote, for more than half an hour, 38 respectable law-abiding citizens in Queens watched a killer stalk and stab a woman in 3 separate attacks in Kew Gardens. Twice the sound of their voices and the sudden glow of their bedroom lights interrupted him and frightened him off each time he returned, sought her out, and stabbed her again. Not one person telephoned the police during the assault. One witness called after the woman was dead. So this is what they reported. And this is something that you and I have talked about many times. The veracity of newspaper reporting.
Right.
That's one thing that we found researching these cases over the last 5 years is that, man, they often get a lot of things wrong.
They do. You would think you'd be able to trust that type of source.
But it's not always the case.
No.
And especially like the New York Times. You kind of think of the Times as this huge, respectable paper. Now, if the police commissioner is telling you this, and that's your source, well, then you're going with that.
Yeah. I mean, someone fact check that and they're like, yeah, the commissioner did say that. Okay, let's run it.
That's what you think fact checking is? Yes, he did say that.
Yeah.
They claimed that the attack lasted 35 minutes and that the assailant had 3 chances to kill Kitty. They said Kitty was screaming, please help me, and not a single person did anything. Now, the spokesman for the New York PD told the Times there's no legal responsibility, with few exceptions, for any citizen to report a crime. We can understand the reticence of people to become involved in an area of violence, but when they're in their homes, near phones, why should they be afraid to call the police? And this is a very important article. It's really the basis for a phenomenon psychologists would later name the bystander effect, also known as Genovese syndrome. The bystander effect was named by John Darley and Bibb Latané. It occurs because witnesses are less likely to help a victim of a crime if there are other witnesses around. So basically, the more witnesses you have, the less likely people are to help.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, I was going to help, but they're there. They're help them.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you driven by somebody that looks like they need help, but you're like, you know what? I think those cars will probably pull over, and no reason for me to turn around and go back.
Or there's already somebody pulled over.
Yeah,
I don't need to help.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's along those lines of I don't need to do anything because there's so many other people here. Someone is going to do something, and then nobody ends up doing anything. Kitty's case was one of the most cited incidents in social psychology research up until 9/11. Her murder was also used as support for the argument that cities were morally depraved and declining every day. So again, you've got this article saying all these people witnessed her murder and did nothing. Our cities are really going to pot, basically.
And I'm also thinking about the Seinfeld episode that kind of followed this as well. The bystander law.
Yeah, I think they called it the Good Samaritan law.
Yeah.
I don't think it's apples and apples because if I'm remembering correctly, there was nobody else that witnessed the crime other than them.
Right.
And I don't even know why they called it the Good Samaritan law, because actually there is a Good Samaritan law, but it's designed to shield people, I think, from, like if you're on the side of the road dying and I try to give you CPR and mouth to mouth and you die, your family can't come sue me, I think. It's something like that.
Which is good.
No, it's a good law.
Yeah, because people used to sue somebody for assisting them when they were injured and hurt. Yeah. He pulled me on my burning car because he did that. Now my back is broken.
And I tore your guest jeans, so you want me to pay for your jeans?
Yeah.
Your Jordache?
But they don't think about my Jordache. Hey. But they don't think about the fact that they didn't burn up in a car.
Yeah. I get you. You might be going a little bit over the top, but along those lines, yeah.
And don't talk about my Jordashes and my Calvins, because nothing comes between me and my Calvins.
Nothing. But I said right up front, Gibbs, that, this article was proven false. Decades later, journalists began a movement to correct the misinformation spread by the Times in the 60s. In 1979, ABC's 2020 tried to interview witnesses, but they couldn't get anyone to talk to them. In 2004, Jim Reisenberger wrote an article debunking the claims of the 1964 article. In 2016, an editor's note was added to the original 1964 article. It said, later reporting by the Times and others has called into question significant elements of this account. And Kitty's younger brother, Bill Genovese, produced a documentary called The Witness that really tries to debunk the Times claims. He started filming it in March of 2004. He analyzed court documents, police records, and interviewed witnesses. And I think through all of these different investigations, it was revealed that really only a few witnesses saw what happened and failed to help Kitty. According to Bill's research, only 5 of the 38 alleged witnesses were even called to the stand. And neighbor Carl Ross was one of the witnesses. He was drunk that night, which I'm assuming is what got him arrested for disorderly conduct. He heard noises and decided to investigate. He witnessed Winston stab Kitty the first time. He saw Kitty laying at the bottom of the stairs, alive and trying to speak. And apparently Carl shut his door and called his friend to ask what he should do. And his friend said, hey, don't get involved.
This is some really bad advice, though.
Well, and I think this is the heart of it, right? You want to do what's right. You want to help people, but do you want to insert yourself into a situation where, let's say, a madman has a gun?
Yeah.
Has a knife and is stabbing someone? Are you going to rush in and try to help? Some people would, and some people wouldn't. Number one, they'd be frozen with fear. And I think to a lot of people, the risk of themselves being hurt would outweigh the, hey, I want to help this person.
I just find it frustrating. And why call your friend and not just call the police right then?
Well, that part, yes, that part is hard to understand. What this guy ended up doing was climbing out his window and going to a neighbor's apartment. And it was after he heard Sophia Farrar call out for help that he called police. And he later said, I did not want to get involved. So, he was the person that called police. But obviously, judging by what we just talked about, he could have called sooner. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
You've got to call to a friend to ask advice. You're crawling out of a window to get to a neighbor's house. That takes time.
And the thought was, if the ambulance could have got there sooner, she might have lived.
Right. We don't know how much sooner. We don't know if it's minutes. Is it 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes? I don't know. But you just think about how long it takes to do certain things. How long does it take to call a friend and kind of explain what's going on? Then how long does it take to climb out of your window and go to the neighbor's house? Is it 5 minutes? Probably. Could 5 minutes have saved Kitty's life? Probably.
Yeah.
So Sophia Farrar is one witness who did help Kitty, and I think she's often forgotten. She lived across the hall from Kitty, and they were good friends. She showed no fear and helped her friend, despite the fact that she didn't know where the killer was. Was he coming back? She forced open the door to get to her. She held Kitty until the police arrived, and she comforted her by saying, help is on the way. Sophia died in 2020. Her obituary states that the eyewitness number was exaggerated. No one saw the full attack. Those who heard it thought it was just a drunk couple fighting, and several people did call the police.
Well, there you go. Those are some actual facts that didn't get reported back in that time. I think the question is, when did those people call the police?
Yeah, I mean, we know Carl Ross called, but as we just talked about, I think there's a lot of speculation that he could have called much sooner. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. Once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like they're 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. Bill Genovese spoke to Michael Farrar, Sophia's son. Before she died, Sophia was not able to walk much. She couldn't leave her house, but she gave Michael information to tell Bill. She said that night she and Michael heard a loud, what she described Gibbs as a horrible, blood-curdling scream. She said the scream was so loud that she figured the whole neighborhood could have heard it. Now, they couldn't see anything from their window, and they tried to forget about it. But 20 minutes later, someone called Sophia, and Sophia told her husband, Kitty's in the hall bleeding. So she threw on her coat, and she ran downstairs. But when Sophia tried to open the door, it hit Kitty's body. Kitty was laying on the ground by the stairs. Now, she was alert, she was still fighting, but Sophia managed to calm her down. She also said that the entire foyer was covered in blood. Now, I don't want to badmouth Carl Ross. I really don't. But it's hard not to take a look at these two individuals and see the differences in how they acted that night.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, she sprung into action.
She put on her clothes and was like, I don't care what's going on. I'm going to help my friend.
Yeah. She didn't have to call a friend to ask the friend, what should I do?
And she had no idea where the killer was. Was that person coming back? Would she get attacked? She, like you said, she just sprung into action. According to Sophia, she stopped talking because the paper twisted her words. She said that she wouldn't hesitate to do the same thing again, but the paper claimed she said she'd never get involved again. Well, that's why some people quit talking.
Yeah.
Bill found another witness who heard the murder, and he read her court testimony. She heard a voice from her apartment. She heard screaming, and she saw a man running to the bus stop. She saw the girl get up slowly and scream for help, and then she walked back to the street. A few minutes later, the man came back, walking normally as though nothing had happened. He went to the train tracks and came out again. He went to the back of the building. This woman couldn't really see anything, but she heard help, help 2 more times. Another individual who heard Kitty was Irene Frost. That night, she heard a scream. She got out of bed, looked out her window, and saw a man and a woman standing in front of the bookstore. Nothing happened, so she went back to bed. But shortly after that, she heard, "Please God, please help me, I've been stabbed." Irene saw Kitty kneeling on the sidewalk and a man running down the street. So from all of this investigation, Bill determined that the number 38 most likely came from the 38 interviews that police conducted. There definitely was not 38 eyewitnesses. The only call on the police's call log was from Carl Ross, despite reports from multiple people that they called the police. The police never made a record of Sophia's statement, so it's possible that they missed a lot of details that night.
As far as the call log, I can see whoever's taking the calls at the police station, probably got the one call, logged it. Maybe a few other calls came in and said, yeah, we heard about that. We're aware of it.
It's possible.
And just didn't log the rest of them.
Yeah, I could see how that could happen. But I could also see Gibbs, people later saying that they called police because they didn't want to be in that camp of someone who heard or saw something but didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So I think it could go both ways.
Sure.
So we know all of this information now. But at the time, back then, all people knew was that Winston Moseley was an evil man who murdered an innocent woman, and her neighbors watched it all happen without any concern. And I think that has to be tough, too, if you live for years and years with people thinking that you were so callous, that you heard something, you saw something, and you didn't do anything. When you really did, well, that's not good. All because of a newspaper article? It's tough.
It's really tough.
At his murder trial, Winston pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but he was declared fit to stand trial. On June 10th, 1965, he testified in court and described in detail the women he had killed. And Gibbs, he said he felt no remorse or guilt for the things that he had done. Okay, well, you're not really trying to get out of this. And I guess it was probably hard for him to get out of it at this point. He'd confessed in detail to, the murders, rapes, all of that. I guess his only chance would have been an insanity defense, but that was nullified. Winston's trial ended later that day, and he was found guilty of murder and rape. Kitty's family never went to the trial. Gibbs, they just couldn't make themselves go and sit there and face hearing the details of her death, which I always think would be extremely hard for family members. Now, I think by and large, most of the time, family members attend the court hearings. They want to see the person they believe killed their loved ones face justice.
Yes.
Doesn't mean it's easy. It cannot be easy. So I don't blame a family or family members at all if they say, you know what, I don't want to sit there and hear all this. I can understand why someone wouldn't want to put themselves through that.
It would be so difficult to hear all that. But like for me, I'd want to be there because I'd want to try to look the guy in the eyes. I'd want to make sure he sees me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I believe I would want to be there too, but I cannot blame people that decide not to go.
And I would be worried that once I heard all the details of what happened, I might try to jump over the table or whatever to get my hands on them.
Well, my assumption is they would put extra security in place ahead of time, knowing that you were in the courtroom.
They would have to.
Yeah, I think there would be some tasering, probably. I can imagine you'd get tasered at some point during a trial.
I've been tasered before.
Yeah, it doesn't always stop you, but, they might have to go 2 or 3, like in The Hangover.
Yeah.
It might take more than one.
Last time it was more than one, I wet myself.
To put you down. Winston was sentenced to death on June 15th, 1965. At his sentencing, the judge said, I must say, I feel this may be improper when I see this monster, but I wouldn't hesitate to pull the switch on him myself. So, this is a judge who's not mincing words. Most judges don't talk like that. And this was a judge who was known to be opposed to capital punishment. So I think that tells you just how strongly he felt about this guy and the heinous crime that Winston committed.
But he really felt that the punishment fit the crime.
But not only that, but he said he would pull the switch himself. According to the Berkshire Eagle, Winston showed not a hint of emotion when he was sentenced to death. And I guess the courtroom spectators applauded as the judge read the sentence. Robert Sparrow, Winston's lawyer, later told Bill Genovese that the best word to describe Winston Moseley was ice. Nothing fazed this guy at all. He said that Moseley was bright and manipulative. Gibbs, he estimated that Moseley's IQ was somewhere around 135. If that's the case, that would put him in the range of being extremely intelligent.
Yeah. And when you realize how intelligent he was, you have to ask yourself, so when he confessed to all those, he didn't have to. He knew what he was doing. Is that because he was tired? He wanted to be caught? He wanted this to move on? Or did the police really outwit him?
I don't know that the police did anything special.
Yeah.
All they did was say, hey, you drive a white car. You got some suspicious scabs on you. We think you might have killed this woman. Yep, I did it.
And I did these other ones too.
And not only that, but let me tell you about this, this, and this. I don't think the police were so smart that they bamboozled this guy. Now, was he tired of the frog demon, the compulsion, the having to go out at night and stalk women? I don't know. Because I always think that these guys are so into this.
Yeah.
That they don't want to get caught because that means they'll never be able to do it again. But yet he confesses so easily that, what other type of conclusion can you draw?
And the way that he confesses, like it's no big deal. Here's what happened.
Yeah.
I did this.
Well,
I did that.
Even his attorney said that the way he talked about his crimes, no matter how severe they were, it was like he was telling you what he had for lunch. That's why he called him ice.
Yeah.
No emotion whatsoever. In 1967, New York State abolished most capital punishments. The state abolished the death penalty unless an officer was killed in the line of duty, a murder was committed in a prison, or during a prison escape. Now, the decision was not retroactive, but the court allowed Winston's appeal. He won his appeal, and his death sentence was reduced to life in prison on June 1st, 1967. Winston actually escaped prison in 1968 during a hospital visit. Apparently, he overpowered a guard, stole his gun, and fled. He terrorized the city of Buffalo for about 4 days. Gibbs, he raped a woman and held some people hostage at gunpoint until he was captured.
Bad dude, man.
Yeah. Now, when he was arrested, he received 30 more years in prison as punishment. But he was already doing life. And what were the chances that he was going to get out on parole? Who was going to let this guy out on parole?
Well,
early.
We say that, but we have seen some questionable releases in the past.
Yeah, I think that's actually an understatement. So you got me there. But to a guy like Winston, serving a life sentence, what's 30 years? It's definitely not going to deter him from trying to escape and harm innocent people.
1971, he did participate in a pretty famous prison uprising.
Attica. Yeah, the deadliest prison riot in U.S. history. And Winston was a part of it. In later prison interviews, he said that he was going to try to do positive and constructive things to make up for his crimes. I guess this was after he escaped and committed more crimes.
Yeah. Now I'm going to do better.
Starting right now.
Yeah.
Forget about that other stuff. Starting right now, I'm going to make up for it. He earned a degree in sociology, and he even wrote an editorial piece for the Times claiming he was reformed. Bill Genovese spoke to Winston's son, Stephen, while he was filming the documentary. Stephen was very defensive of his father and said he was a good person. Stephen said that Winston told him Kitty was calling him racial slurs that night, and that's why he killed her. Now, I don't know if anybody believes that.
I doubt it.
I don't believe it. I can't imagine too many people do. Winston also told Stephen that the Genovese family was involved with the mafia. And Winston sent Bill Genovese a letter explaining that He was just a getaway driver for a mobster who executed Kitty. So he wrote this elaborate story, Gibbs, trying to tell Kitty's brother exactly what happened, but it was all a lie.
So where's the positive and constructive things he was going to do?
Maybe he hadn't started at this point.
Well, it's going to be now.
Starting right now.
I gotcha.
Winston's final appeal was rejected in 2015, and he died at the Clinton Correctional Facility on March 28th, 2016 at the age of 81. So he spent 52 years in prison, one of the longest serving inmates in New York. It's a long time, 52 years. Now, is it long enough? No, not to me. I mean, I think for what this man did, if he's not going to get the death penalty, then he deserved to die in prison. I just can't see a monster like this ever being set free.
No.
Because look what happened when he escaped.
Yep.
What do you think's going to happen if you release him back into society?
Yeah.
With basically no prospects? The chances of him going back to doing bad things is about 99.9%, in my opinion.
Oh, I mean, same here too. He's just going to repeat what he did that got him in prison in the first place.
So I kind of touched on it, but Kitty's murder is part of the reason that we have the 911 system. New York City officials joined together in a national effort to get one emergency number rather than locals having to memorize the police station number. Before 911, people had to dial 0 for the operator, or they had to actually dial the local police station. And sometimes it went from a communications bureau then to being passed on to the police. So you can see how that old system could cause significant delays in response times. 911 began in 1968. And we touched on Good Samaritan laws, but those were also passed in New York to encourage people to take action and help victims.
I mean, the 911 system, and I don't know what kind of stats are out there, but I can't imagine how many thousands upon thousands of lives it has saved since being introduced.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, you get to where people have called 911, they're not able to talk, but 911 is able to trace where the call is coming from, help get sent. Just a lot of good things have come from that.
And we've heard some good stories. We've got Lisa that calls in now and then.
Our 911 dispatcher.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
for many years, Kitty's family, they just never talked about her. And obviously it wasn't because they didn't love her. It was just that talking about her was too painful because all they could think about was her death. Most of the Genovese grandchildren don't know anything about Kitty. Besides what they've researched themselves as they've gotten older, Kitty's girlfriend, Anne, struggled for a long time. She said that she felt like she just never got closure for what happened.
Well, it was the love of her life.
Yeah, the two of them were in love. They were planning to spend the rest of their lives together, but that was taken away from her unexpectedly. Bill Genovese has said that although many people heard the murder rather than witnessed it, Kitty's case is still an example of the bystander effect. And apparently this is a pretty shockingly common phenomenon. And you and I have touched on it before, right? The natural tendency when people hear something disturbing is to brush it off and move on.
Yeah.
I think I've told you before, I hear gunshots all the time. There's a farm across the way from my house. There's always somebody shooting a gun over there. So when I hear a gunshot, I don't think anything about it.
I go, it's just that neighbor shooting his gun off again.
Now, people that live in New York City, okay, that's not the norm for them.
Right.
And in other areas of the country. But those of us that live in, I'm not even in a rural area, but in a somewhat rural area, you hear a gunshot, your mind does not automatically go to, oh my gosh, something bad is happening.
Yeah.
You think somebody's just out in the field somewhere firing a gun.
But if you're in an urban area, it's a whole other story.
It is. The problem is, brushing it off, it's not always the right thing to do. If you hear or see something that isn't right, it's better to be safe than sorry. You could save someone's life by checking on them or calling for help. But I get it. We're all busy, Gibbs. People want to get where they're going. And there are those people that just do not want to get involved in something that they think might be dangerous or maybe just none of their business. I think everybody has to make those types of decisions for themselves. I will say for me, because that's really all I can speak to, if I saw something and in my heart, I knew it wasn't right, and I walked by it, and then I later saw on the news that person was killed, I would feel horrible.
Yeah.
That I didn't do something when I had the chance, either to actually intervene or at the very least to call police and say, hey, you might want to check this out. There's something not right here. And I get it. A lot of people would not want to physically intervene because they would be scared.
Sure.
Shouldn't be scared to call the police.
No.
I mean, if nothing's going on, nothing's going on. And the police have come out and they've checked on it. Okay, did they waste some time? Maybe. But in the grand scheme of things, is that better than not calling at all? I think it is.
I think they would say better to call us than not.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's it for our case on Winston Moseley and the murder of Kitty Genovese. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's check them out.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. So I found your podcast randomly a while ago, and I'm a delivery driver, so I listen like every single day. I started back with your first episodes, and it's amazing to see how much you guys have changed over this span of time. It's amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. But I just had to call because I'm currently listening to the John McCrae episode, and it is kind of freaking me out because that is actually my dad's name, is John McCrae. In the McCrae clan, hailing from Scotland, there's a lot of Johns. So thankfully, this is not actually my dad, but it's just really creepy. Every time you say John McCrae, it just like tingles down my spine, and it's very strange. But yeah, I just had to call and let you know that this one is just extra strange for me. But thank you guys so much for all you do, and keep your own time taken.
Well, I think that would be strange if you were listening to a true crime podcast and they kept saying your dad's name the entire time and he was doing bad things. I do think her turn signal was on the entire time,
she's a safe delivery driver,
or she forgot to turn it off, or that was something completely different that was making some noise that sounded like a turn signal.
Maybe it was the flashers.
That could have been because she has to jump out and make the delivery.
I'm going to be on the phone. I'm going to pull over and make my call.
Super safe.
Super safe.
Gotcha.
Hey guys, it's Dispatcher Lisa, and I have to tell you I'm a little frightened. I'm starting to share a brain with Gibby because right before he said that about the Jimmy comment, I was thinking about Seinfeld and Jimmy does this and Jimmy does that. So there's that. Maybe I need to back off of listening for a while. Nah. You guys have a great day. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Wait, is she trying to imply it's a bad thing to think like Gibby?
Do you think it's a good thing?
Well, that's true.
No, it's funny though. I didn't even put it together. We just talked about her, and she left a voicemail. I didn't even remember that it was going to be on this episode.
Yeah, we even referenced a little Seinfeld.
Yeah, so all full circle.
It did.
Hi, my name is Beth. I've been listening to your podcast, both of them, for the past couple years. Love them. There's so many things that I enjoy about your podcast. A couple of them are just Rex West, of course, and I actually have a grandson named Rex, so I totally identify with him. Tom Cruise as Jack Reacher, no way. Agree with you there. My son's birthday is the same as Mike's, and I just totally love you guys, Mike and Gibby. Keep your own time ticking, and I'll continue to watch and listen. Bye-bye.
Wow, a lot of connections.
Yeah.
She has a grandson named Rex, so, when the Rex West talk comes up, that's got to be a little tough.
She's probably a little worried that maybe he might go into dancing at the clubs
I doubt it. I'm sure he's being raised correctly. No, I'm just kidding. No, that makes dancers sound like they weren't raised correctly. That's not true.
Hey, those male review teams, man, someone went to MIT. That's Mike's international talent school, but
wouldn't that be MITS?
Oh, yeah. Well, again, that's why we did not go to the real MIT.
You said almost went.
Yeah.
I can say I almost went to Harvard.
Well, yeah, sure. How do you like those apples?
I was 0.1% of the way there, but I almost went.
Yeah. I mean, my car was headed that direction.
Hi, Mike and Gibby, and Sydney in Indiana. I am also a mail carrier, so it kind of sounds like you're a city one. I'm a rural one from Reno, Nevada, and I also listen to true crime shows while I'm out delivering. I sort of keep them. I listen to them even when it's raining because I keep it close to my heart. I cheat and I keep my phone in my bra. Anyways, you were saying you deliver in a somewhat scary area where you look behind your back, and I was rural, deliver out where there's hardly anybody, and so, especially during Christmas time when we're just out for 14, 15 hours a day, and it's super, super dark, and I'm out in the middle of the countryside with hardly anyone around. Sometimes I have to take a little mini break from listening to them because I start realizing that I'm all by myself in this truck with bright lights flashing saying, I'm all alone and I don't have good night vision. But anyways, I wanted to thank you, Mike and Gibby, so much for giving me something to focus on so that I'm not incredibly bored while I am delivering the mail. And I wish you guys all the best. Thank you.
Well, that mail delivery business is scary.
Yeah. I may have given off the wrong impression over the years, Gibbs. I was a mail carrier,
yeah,
but only for a summer.
Yep.
While I was home for college. But I did have my own truck and everything.
You did.
I didn't have to wear the uniform. I just wore like shorts and a t-shirt.
Where I did have to wear the uniform.
Well,
a better looking uniform.
When you drive for Brown, then
that's right.
That's what you got to do.
Exactly.
So, but we appreciate the voicemails. Gibbs, we had some mailbag. Lori L sent us a couple of handmade keep your own time ticking clocks. Very cool.
Tick tock, tick tock.
Yeah. Handmade and they work and everything.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that. All right, Gibbs, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Inspired by the hit Wondery podcast Against the Odds comes the gripping guidebook, How to Survive Against the Odds, Tales and Tips for Animal Attacks and Natural Disasters. This might just be the most important book you'll ever read. Go inside life or death situations where everyday people survived nature's most extreme scenarios, and learn how you can too. In these tales, you'll hear about the grit, willpower, and know-how needed to endure shipwrecks, alligator attacks, earthquakes, and more. You'll learn from experts, including top doctors, about what happens to your body and mind in life-threatening situations. Plus, important tips on what to do, and equally important, what not to do when faced with a situation that is truly against the odds. Go to survivalguidebook.com to pre-order How to Survive Against the Odds today and get the perfect gift in time for graduation and Father's Day.